Blog Talk Radio.
He is the last of his kind. All that remains of a once powerful nation. Some think he is a myth. Some believe he is the chosen one, who will bring balance to a world at war. And some will stop at nothing to destroy him.
All right, welcome everybody to Morris Talk Live 100. I'm your host, Tarhaka Amana El Bay, and tonight our special guest is Dr. Walter Williams. We will be discussing the beginning history of the people of Europe. That's tonight's topic. These are some of the questions that we're going to be dealing with. What is a European in the first place? What is that? Where did they come from? Are Europeans human beings? What is the record of the European on earth? How have Europeans treated other native peoples around the world? How have Europeans treated each other around the world? What is the beginning history of the European in the world? From where on earth are Europeans native? These are just a few of the questions that we're going to deal with tonight. And Dr. Williams is going to be with us shortly. But I'm going to go ahead and get a head start. Before we go into the commercials, I'm going to, I have a book in my hand here written by a gentleman named Mr. Michael Bradley. He wrote a book called The Iceman Inheritance. Prehistoric Sources of Western Man's Racism, Sexism, and Aggression. Right here in the introduction, it states the following. In this book, The Iceman Inheritance, the Canadian writer Michael Bradley has made the most glaring admission about the Europeans' attempt to dominate the world through racism. There are a large number of books on this subject, but the writer tends to hedge on the subject by inferring that in spite of the atrocities and the racism brought to this world by the Caucasian race, they have given the world some order, some technology and art and letters of lasting benefit. What the authors of these books do not take into consideration is that in spite of the contributions that benefit the world, Europeans in their attempt at world domination created a disastrous climate for the world's people. Caucasians in general have an inferiority complex about their world position. If they were secure within alleged superiority, they would not have to shout it to the world so often and so loudly. When a people feel called upon to repeatedly announce their superiority to the world, it is suspected that behind all their pretense, they do not believe it as much as they want other people to believe they do. In contrast, if the same people believed in the inferiority of the rest of the world, its people and its cultures, they would not spend so much time trying to prove their point. Inferior things normally fall into an inferior position and usually stay there without any help from anybody. All the European laws, lies, manipulation, or religion have not kept most of the non-European world in the inferiority position. European world have assigned to it. Throughout their history, which is a short and in comparison to the history of the other peoples, especially the Africans and the Asians, they have been astute record keepers. When it suited their purpose, they have also been astute record changers. As a result of the Europeans have caused us to read the history of the world in their favor, this book has provoked some non-Europeans into taking a new view of world history. In order to understand how European people related to non-Europeans throughout history, the first thing we learn is that there was no Europe in ancient times. Wow. The geographical area that would later be called Europe was not a functioning entity in world affairs. When early civilization was being developed in the Nile Valley and other river valleys in Africa and later in the Western Asia, non-mistakenly called the Middle East, and in mainland Asia in countries like India, China, and later Japan, when we look at the chronology of the world history, we discover that the first real show of European literacy intelligence surfaced around 1250 BC, depending on your source, with the publication of two books of folklore, the Odyssey and the Iliad, created to an author named Homer, who we have little information about. In the book, A History of the Modern World by R.R. Palmer and Joel Colton, they tell us that Europeans were by no means the pioneers of human civilization. My goodness. I'm going to stop right there. We'll get back into this a little bit later on, but I got to go on and get these commercials done. But man, this is astounding. That in itself right there can tell you point blank where you are on this earth and what you're dealing with. Okay? Right there, point blank. Y'all hold on a minute. We'll be right back. Hey everybody, this is Tarhaka again. I would like to introduce you to the Great Debate. We now have copies of the Great Debate. Dr. Walter Williams debates Prince Ezio ben Israel of the Hebrew Israelites. Also, Reverend Henry Hardy of one of the most prominent churches in Chicago, Illinois. Chester Blair, a major attorney in Chicago. And Munir Muhammad of the Nation of Islam. The whole thing is hosted by W.L. Lillard. Dr. Walter Williams debate these men on their belief versus what he knows for a fact and he can prove. Get your copy by going to www.tarhakadebtelimination.org. That's tarhakadebtelimination.org, or you can go to newdataelimination.com. newdataelimination.com. Contact me for your copies. Okay? The Great Debate. You got any questions, just give me a shout. Peace.
For Tarhaka's free report, go to tarhakadebtelimination.org. Put in your email address, and he will rush your free report to your email box. Learn about what's going on in America. Learn about big tobacco and what's in it for you. Go to www.tarhakadebtelimination.org. I'm Chantel. Thanks.
All right, everybody, we're back for just the moment. It appears that my guest is in the queue. But before we open up the line and let him in, I just want to I'll tell you that tonight will be a good idea if you would get a paper and pencil so that you can write down some notes. And later on in the broadcast, we're going to open up the phone lines so that you can get a chance to ask our guests some questions, and you'll be able to be live with us right here on the air. Now, the number to dial into the broadcast is 319-527-6084. That's 319-527-6084. You got something to say, press 1 on your phone. That'll give me an indication that you have something to say. Open up the phone lines so you can get in, okay? Keep in mind that the chat room is wide open. Please be respectable in the chat room, as you can place your questions and your comments right there, and I go back and forth while I'm on the switchboard, and that way I can get over there and see what you got going, okay? All right, 319-527-6084. Let me go over here and open up the phone line to see if my guest is ready, and then we can proceed with tonight's topic, the beginning history of the people of Europe. We're going to just see if we can lay out all of the facts, okay? Hold on 1 second. Dr. Walter Williams, area code 773. Are you with us?
Yes, I'm here, Brother Tarhaka. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. You're coming across loud and clear. We're broadcasting today, Sunday night, June the 27th, and we're ready to rock and roll, man. But before we do, I can tell you right now, I'm looking at the switchboard. We got a whole ton of brand new people on here. The board is lit up. So if you would give us for the new people who may not know who you are, tell us about briefly who you are and about this great debate thing, so we can go on into tonight's broadcast and latest information out. You have
okay. My name is Walter Williams, and I was born, raised, and miseducated in Chicago, Illinois, where I live at this present moment. I wrote 2 books, The Historical Origin of Christianity and The Historical Origin of Islam. Those books, The Historical Origin of Christianity, has been out for 27 years. The thesis of that book is saying that there's never been a man that ever walked the earth in human form of any race, creed, or color by the name of Jesus Christ. My second book, The Historical Origin of Islam, has been out for 18 years, and the thesis of that book is saying that there's never been a man that ever walked the earth in human form by the name of the Prophet Muhammad that ever walked the earth as a human being. So those are my 2 books, and I taught on the college level in Chicago at Olive Harvey College in Chicago and Kennedy King College in Chicago, and I taught elementary school in Chicago. So that is some of my background as to who I am, and I also created a museum called the Ancient Egyptian Museum and Institute here in Chicago. That museum and institute was up and running for 11 years before I closed it because of lack of support. But anyway, that is some of my background, personal background, and also I heard your brother Tarhaka mention about the Great Debate. Well, let me give you a little rundown on that. The Great Debate, I think, was one of the most outstanding debate and conversation that I have had in my whole 46 years out here in the community, passing and disseminating information. That debate took place in 1993, and it was set up by the host, W.L. Lyric, because he owned the studio and the broadcasting system that the debate was carried on over Chicago and around Chicago and the suburbs and so forth and so on. But anyway, he set that up for my demise. He set it up on purpose so I can be defeated, because I was saying, and this is something new at the time, 1993, that here come a unknown individual, Walter Williams, who in the hell is Walter Williams, saying that there was no Jesus Christ. Something's wrong here. How can this guy come up out of nowhere saying that there's no Jesus Christ and write a book on that? And my Historical Origin of Islam hadn't been out yet, because my Historical Origin of Islam came out in 2003. My Historical Origin of Christianity came out in 1993. So there's a big difference there. So anyway, he set this debate up to have me defeated. And so he thought. But he set it up with his friends now and his personal lawyer. Now, I'll get to the lawyer part in a few minutes. But he set it up with his friend, Prince Asiel Ben Israel of the Black Hebrew Israelite group that was headed by Ben Ami, that group that went to Dibona, Israel, and set up camp over there in I believe it was 1960 or the 60s, somewhere up in that area. So anyway, it was Prince Asiel from the Black Hebrew Israelite nation or group, or whatever you want to call it. And then there was this Christian minister who has a very prominent church in Chicago, Reverend Henry Hardy of the Cosmopolitan Community Church in Chicago. He was on that panel also. And then there was Munir Muhammad from the Nation of Islam. He was there debating me. And then the lawyer, Chester L. Blair, he was debating me because I'm saying and had said that we as an African people born in the United States of America were not citizens of this country called America. So quite naturally, a lawyer, in order to become a lawyer, take his bar exam, he's got to pledge that he will uphold the Constitution. So in the Constitution, he cannot say that we're not citizens, because the Constitution supposedly says that we are. So anyway, I debated him on that. And then, of course, W.L. Lurie. He's the mastermind behind all of this, because he thought I was a smart aleck, just coming out with something, just throwing stuff against the wall, hoping it'll stick. So he set out to get all these men, including himself, to defeat Walter Williams. And that is what the great debate is all about. And like Tarhaka said, you can contact him, and that he'll see that you get a copy of the great debate. So anyway, let's go to the topic of tonight's discussion. The topic of tonight's discussion is the history and origin of the European. Okay? Who is this European? Where did he come from? What is some of his history? You know, how did he get on the scene of history? That's very, very, very important to know that. So, let's begin. It's been a consensus among colleges and universities as to how the races of man came on the scene of history. And they used the discipline of history to do that. And they said, in this discipline of history, in this consensus that they created among themselves, that the black race were the oldest race on earth. And that's true. The black race is represented by the ancient Egyptians, our African ancestors. They hold the oldest position in the into the races of man, the African race known as the ancient Egyptians. And they have a beginning history at 10,000 BC. Okay? Now, let me explain this to you. Don't ever go beyond 10,000. Don't let nobody say, oh, man existed billions of years ago or millions of years ago. No, no, no. There's nothing to sustain billions and millions of years ago for man. There's no history out there. So stop at 10,000 BC. The oldest race known to man using the discipline of history is our ancestors, those Africans living in the continent of Africa at the time. They hold the position as being the oldest race of people on this planet. And they are known in history as the ancient Egyptians. Their civilization started in the Nile Valley, and they call it the Nile Valley civilization of ancient Egypt. The second known race, or the second oldest race, is the brown race, and that is represented by the people of India, who started their civilization in the Indus Valley civilization in India. And their date for their beginning starts at 2,500, not to exceed 3,000 BC. And the third race is the yellow race. The yellow race is represented by the people of China. People of China is the third oldest known race of people to humanity. And their beginning history started at 1,500, not to exceed 2,000. Okay? And they started in the Wang-Ho Valley of China, their beginning civilization. Now, here comes the fourth race. This is very important. The fourth race is the white European race. The white European race does not have a known history of themselves. They'll tell you that in book form, in academia form, etc., etc. They do not possess a known history for themselves. Okay? So now, let's start out and find out where these people came from, who they are, and how they got started. Now, let's go and start with the Greeks first. Okay? The Greeks were in Macedonia, Greece, which is in a part of Europe. A people and a group known as the Greeks, under the leadership of Alexander the Greek, began to leave Macedonia, Greece, and traveling east through the Aegean Sea until they reached Northeast Africa. Northeast Africa today is called the Middle East. Again, Northeast Africa today is called the Middle East, which is a political name. Has nothing to do with geographics. Just a name that they put into place of Northeast Africa and calling it the Middle East for a political reason. And that goes into another history. But anyway, here come these Greeks traveling east through the Aegean Sea, and they ended up in the country that we know today as Turkey and Syria. Okay? Turkey and Syria. That's in Northeast Africa. Northeast Africa, again, is known today as the East. So that was in 333 BC. Alexander the Greek stayed in Turkey for 1 year, and he left one of his lieutenants in charge of that plunder in that area, Seleucus Nicator. And then he and his group of thugs, I have to call them that because that's what they are, uncivilized group of people out of Europe, no alphabet, were not literate because they could not read or write. I'm not saying that to degrade them. I'm saying that for a fact. That's the fact. They could not read or write. So here, Alexander stayed in northeast Africa, known as the Middle East today, for 1 year in Turkey and Syria, that land area, so you know exactly where I'm talking about. They, after staying there a year, they crossed what is known as the Suez Canal going west, using the Suez Canal. The Suez Canal we know today is a area east of Egypt. So he finds his way in Egypt in 332 BCE. He was in awe over the magnificent, unbelievable civilization that he blundered upon and stumbled upon. These African people, our ancestors, the ancient Egyptians. He was in awe over what they were doing, how they were living, and what they had achieved in culture. He was in awe over that. So he decided to stay over there. And once his decision to stay over there, now he was met in that area by the Melkite Coptic Egyptians who ran the government of ancient Egypt. So seeing that the Greeks under Alexander was not going to leave, the Melkites decided to learn the Greek language in order to correspond with them by way of a language. So they learned the Greek language. And once learning the Greek language, by them being a literate people, you know, quite naturally, a literate people is going to apply an alphabet to a language that is foreign to them. That's what the alphabet. That's the reason why they created the alphabet. It's called a phonetic or alphabet. The phonetic alphabet consists of the hieratic demotic script, and with that hieratic demotic script, which becomes phonetic, they're able to learn a language and take the sound of those words coming from that language and apply an alphabet to it. And they did just that to the Greek language, and today you have what is known as the Greek alphabet. The Greeks never had an alphabet because they were illiterate. The Greeks got an alphabet applied to their language by our African ancestors, the ancient Egyptians, because they were the world's first literate people on planet Earth. They created the world's first alphabet on planet Earth. And that's the first thing when an individual goes to school, they learn how to read and how to write. That's the very first thing they learn how to do. That makes you literate. With that alphabet, you're able to read, write, and spell. You become literate. Okay? And, of course, you know that our ancestors, the ancient Egyptians, created all forms of mathematics in order for them to build what they built over there in Egypt, over there in Africa, in the country called Egypt. So these Greeks were in awe over that, and they wanted to be made part of that civilization and culture. So they began to terrorize our ancestors, the ancient Egyptians. Now, I've had, through the years, people have asked me, if the ancient Egyptians were so smart and had all the knowledge and so forth and so on of the first people to bring forth civilization, why did they allow the Greeks to dominate them? Okay, I'll give you an answer. Our ancestors, the ancient Egyptians, never had an army or jails. They had no concept of fighting other people or going into another person's country, plundering their culture, plundering their country, taking from them, stealing from them, killing them. They had no concept of that because they didn't have to live like that. Civilized people did not live like heathens and uncivilized people. Only the European has done that through the years. Now, another thing I'm going to bring to your attention. The European has plundered and dominated and terrorized this whole planet that we call Earth, and every human in this planet, including themselves. You see? So that's the nature of the European, and that's the reason why our ancestors did not have and still do not have that type of nature to go and take from other people. That's the European's nature. So that's one of the things I want to clear up. Now, while in Egypt, this European wanted to be made part and accepted in the community of our ancestors, the ancient Egyptians. He wanted to be accepted into the sacred temple society of ancient Egypt, but was rejected. Why? Because our ancestors did not race mix. They didn't race with nobody. You can get pictorial books depicting ancient Egyptians. You will not find any mixture of races in among those pictures unless you see a European, because he took over Egypt by way of terrorizing our ancestors, the ancient Egyptians. Now, the Melkite Copts, like I mentioned, were the ones that controlled the government of ancient Egypt. They ran the government of ancient Egypt. So trying to appease this European, to try to make him a god so he could be accepted in the sacred society of ancient Egypt, he went and found a temple in Memphis, Egypt, and asked the priests and priestesses of this temple in Memphis, Egypt, to make this Ptolemy into a god. You see, after Alexander came to Egypt in 332 BCE, he died 9 years later, 323 BCE. Now, mind you, BC dates are counted down, and the days dates we live in are counted up. So he died 9 years after coming into Egypt. And it was a meeting among the lieutenant that he left in Syria and Turkey. They called a duodeci meeting, and to find the successor of Alexander. So it was decided that Seleucus, the Qatar, would have northeast Africa, known today as the Middle East, and that the Ptolemy I, Lagi, called Sotar, would have Egypt. So Ptolemy I, being the successor of the Greek, and the successor of Alexander, the Greek, it was decided at this temple in Memphis, Egypt, that they would take two of their deities, Osiris and Apis. Apis was the bull of Memphis. Osiris was one of the main deities in the ancient Egyptian culture. So they took Osiris and Apis, made a composite name of Osiris, and gave that name and the attributes of Osiris to this Ptolemy I, who was a successor of Alexander. Okay? But he went back to the temple and said, would you accept my image into your temple society, so I can be worshipped alongside of Osiris. It says no. So what he did, he closed down all the temples except the one in Memphis, Egypt. And there were 13 other Ptolemies after him. There was 14 in all. The first Ptolemy, like I mentioned, was Ptolemy I, the successor of Alexander the Greek. And then there were 13 other Ptolemies after him. The Ptolemaic dynasty lasted for 302 years, and they tried for 302 years to get our ancestors, those Coptic Egyptians in the secular community, to accept the image of Serapis, or the image of the successor of Alexander the Greek, which was Ptolemy I, Lagi, called Soter. They refused for 302 years. Now, after 302 years of trying to get accepted, the Romans began to, let's say, erupt out of Israel, out of Rome. So the Romans took over Egypt and Northeast Africa, known today as the Middle East. They took over after the Ptolemies, or the Greeks, had been in power for 302 years. They took over in 5 BC when they took over. So from 5 BC all the way up into their time of relinquishing their power, which was 1453. They were in there for 1458 years. Okay? So therefore, during that time, the Romans tried to get our ancestors in the secular community to accept the Serapis in their community. So let's go and see how that came out. When we're going to go up to the time of Constantine. That's a good place to start. Now we're talking about from the time that this image was made in 320 BC of Ptolemy I Lagi, or Soter, given that name of Osiris in 320 BC, all the way up into the Nicene Council of 325, which is the period of 648 years. 645 years. So you have for 645 years, our ancestors in the secular community refused to accept Serapis as a god in their sacred society. So therefore, the Nicene Council of 325, first Nicene Council 325 came about. But what brought that about was 3 historical things. It brought the first council meeting in world history to come about was the Donatist schismatic controversy and the donation of Constantine and a strong statement by Arius. Now, mind you, for 645 years, the Greeks and now the Romans, up to this point, trying to get Serapis accepted into the temple and priest society of the ancient Egyptians. The ancient Egyptians in the secular community refused to do that. So here you come in history with 3 events. The Donatist schismatic controversy, which was a 4th century schism that broke out in North Africa in 301, 302, up in that area, among the secular community in Egypt. Diocletian, who was a co-ruler of, and along with Alexander, decided to heckle and our ancestors in the secular community by asking them to turn over their sacred writings to him. And Bishop Donatus told Mansurius, who was one of the main leaders in the secular community, not to do that, to put himself up for mortar like his before him. And Bishop Secundus backed him up in that request. However, Mansurius got weak and turned those papers over to Diocletian. So that's called the Donatist Schismatic Controversy that caused a split in our secular community in Egypt, caused a big split over there. And with that split being enacted in the secular community, Constantine, who was the ruler at that time, the Roman ruler at that time, decided to take advantage of that split. He decided to find a member in the secular community to accept what is known in history as a donation of Constantine. He found a man by the name of Sylvester I, 313, 314, and he offered Sylvester what is known in history, the donation of Constantine. The donation of Constantine goes like this. He says, Sylvester, if you accept my offer that I'm about to offer you, I will give you my imperial emblems of authority over your people and your community. I will have nothing and no authority over the Coptic Egyptian community, whether it's secular or Melkite. All I want you to do is get your people in the secular community, the Coptic Egyptian, to accept Serapis as a god alongside of your god, Osiris. And also, I want you to do this, is to baptize me in your people's community, and I'll just be made a member of your community and not a ruler over your community. Sylvester accepted what is known in history as a donation of Constantine from Constantine in 313, 314. And then here comes Arius, a member of the Coptic Egyptian secular community, saying that, and disagreeing with Sylvester. Arius said this, says Serapis was a created creature dissimilar from the Father. In other words, the Father being Osiris, dissimilar means not like the Father, a perfect creature, but a creature nevertheless. That's what Arius said. Now, with those three things, the Donatist Schismatic Controversy that I explained to you, the donation of Constantine, and the strong statement by Arius, came the creation of the council meeting called the Council of Nicaea I, the first and oldest council meeting ever held in the world. That was held over there in Turkey. All those council meetings, all 9 of them, were the first 9 council meetings ever held on earth were held in Northeast Africa, today called the Middle East. And that was the first one called the Nicene Council, or the Council of Nicaea, or the Homogeneous Council meeting, whereby the Melkite Coptic Egyptians had the authority to call that council meeting. Constantine had no more authority over that community, so he couldn't call that council meeting. It was Sylvester who called that council meeting because he had the authority to do that. And the idea was to try to create a god to be accepted by the secular community in Egypt that represent the European race. So what the Melkites did at that council meeting was they, see now, Serapis had already been created back in 320 BC. And Serapis was given, like I mentioned before, the attributes of Osiris. So with that attributes of Osiris, he is brought out again. Now, here is the ancient Egyptian divine triad of Osiris, God and Father, Isis, Goddess Mother, and Horus, the Sun, the S-U-N. So that was your African ancient Egyptian triad. That's what makes up the African ancient Egyptian triad of Osiris, Asar, Isis, Aset, Horus, Haru. So now, this Serapis already had the attributes of Osiris. Now, at this council meeting, trying to appease the Greeks all along, because the Melkite Coptic Egyptians were under terrorism or terrorized threats coming from the Greeks. So with that in mind, trying to appease them, trying to make a god for them, they took Horus or Haru out of that African ancient Egyptian divine triad, because he was the sun, S-U-N, and they inserted and put in place of Horus the S-O-N, Serapis. They put his image in there, and they gave him the title of son, S-O-N, of Osiris. So he became the S-O-N of Osiris. Osiris became his father because here his real son, Horus, or Sa, had been taken out of the African ancient Egyptian divine triad. And Horus was the S-U-N. So now you got a white European figure in the African ancient Egyptian divine triad under the name of Serapis, being the S-O-N of Osiris. So that's what went on at the Council of Nicaea I. Now, when this union was made, the S-O-N, and with Osiris, that became the Moses Creed. Okay? I and my Father are one. Homogeneous, Nicene Creed. Homogeneous means the same. Homogeneous Creed. God the Father, God the Son, the same. Homogeneous. So that's what created the Nicene of the Homogeneous Creed at that council meeting. See? Now, I'm going to fast forward so we can get on with this portion of the Europeans' existence, where they came from. I'm going to take you into the Ecumenical Council, the Third Ecumenical Council. I'm going to skip the Second Ecumenical Council of Constantinople 1 through 81. I'm going to skip that, because from the time of 325 to 381, Constantine had created for his capital and took the city of Byzantium and turned it into the capital for his empire, which is that capital that he made in 330 was called Constantinople. See? So here you have the Second Ecumenical Council was the Ecumenical Council of Constantinople, 381. But I'm going to bypass that because it's gritty of this. Now, we're going to go to the Council of Ephesus, Ephesus, Turkey, in 431. At Ephesus, Turkey, you had Serapis being what? Having the attributes of Horus or Haru, because it was given to him at the Council of Nicaea 1 and 325 by the Melchite Coptic Egyptians. After he took Haru out of the African ancient Egyptian divine triad and gave the attributes of his attributes of the son of Osiris and Isis to this Serapis. Now, here at the Council of Ephesus, Serapis comes on the scene with the attributes of Osiris and the attributes of Haru or Horus, the sun. Now, the Melchites is trying to make this Serapis into a god to appease the Greek Ptolemies. So now, on the scene came the Monophysites. The Monophysites came on the scene under the leadership of Eutyches, 431. And the Monophysites said that Serapis had an Osiris-like spirit, but no human nature. In order to have a human nature, that is what makes you a human being. So they said, the Monophysites said that Serapis had an Osiris-like spirit, but no human nature. Very, very important. So, I just want to have a human nature. You get a human nature by being born through the body of a female. So what they did, they set out and they went into the African ancient Egyptian divine triad of Osiris, Isis, and Horus. They took Isis, or Set, out of that triad, and they created a created creature called the Virgin Mary. And they gave that created creature, the Virgin Mary, the attributes of Isis and the title of Isis, Goddess Mother. They gave that to her, to this created creature, the Virgin Mary. Now, what they did with the attributes given to the Virgin Mary, they took the Virgin Mary and they amalgamated the two created creatures, Serapis and now the created creature, the Virgin Mary. They amalgamated the two together to try and make and give this Serapis a human nature. Now, once this was done, the amalgamation was done, the Melchite Coptic Egyptians speaking Greek said, now, this is the Christos, speaking Greek. And in English, the Christos means, now, this is the Christ. So that's how this Christ was created. This non-human called Jesus Christ was created there at Ephesus. This non-human called the Virgin Mary was created there in Ephesus. So now you have two created creatures. See? So now, let's fast forward. 101 years later, under the leadership and the rulership of Justinian and his wife Theodora, 101 years after Ephesus, 101 years after the creation of this created creature called, this non-human created creature called Jesus Christ, this non-human called the Virgin Mary, 101 years later, under the leadership and the rulership of Justinian and his wife Theodora, they ask and commission a group of African architects, African ancient Egyptian architects, to build a building or a church for the worship of Mary and Christ. And in 532, they started out to build this church. It's called the Church of Hagia Sophia, the world's first Christian church ever built on planet Earth. And they built this church beginning in 532, and 5 years later, on December the 27th, they finished that church, December the 27th, 532, and it's called the Church of Mary and Christ, or the Hagia Sophia. Now you can get a picture of the Hagia Sophia. It's on the front cover of my book, The Historical Origin of Christianity. You see the full picture of that church. That's the world's first Christian church ever built on planet Earth. The Church of Hagia Sophia, built to worship and honor Mary and Christ. That's what the church was built for. Now, we're going to come up and fast forward a little bit and see what happened with that church. The church was up and running for 1,453 years before the Ottoman Turks came and came through the double-walled city of Constantinople and seized the Church of Hagia Sophia, okay, and defeated the last Ottoman emperor at that time. Now, mind you, the Ottoman Turks came to power in 1300. So they were in power from 1300, and they had usurped all the land outside of the double-walled city of Constantinople from the Roman emperors. That left them just one stronghold, the Roman emperors, and that was the stronghold behind the double-walled city of Constantinople. Within the double-walled city of Constantinople housed the world's first Christian church, the Church of Hagia Sophia. So in 1453, the double-walled city of Constantinople was invaded by the Ottoman Turks. They took a cannon and blew a hole on the side of one of the walls and entered Constantinople that way. And they seized Constantinople, and they seized the Church of Hagia Sophia. See? Now, before that happened, 14 years before that happened, the Roman Emperor John VIII went to Florence, Italy, and relinquished the donation of Constantine, the power over that church, to relinquish it in Florence, Italy, and relinquish it at the Curia, C-U-R-I-A, in Florence, Italy, and the Curia in Ferrara, Italy. He released that to 12 men who was going to be responsible to receive the seed of Christianity. And those, they had 6 from the Curia at Florence and 6 from the Curia at Ferrara, Italy. These 12 men, they were humanists who had studied at the Curia in Florence, at the Curia in Ferrara. And we're going to get to that because that's the second part of knowing the Europeans' history. The second part. But this is the first part, starting with Alexander. Now, here, John VIII relinquishing in 1439 the donation of Constantine for the seat of Christianity to be moved into Europe. Okay? This was done 1439. 14 years later, in 1453, the Ottoman Turks took a cannon and blew a hole in the double-walled city of Constantinople and entered Constantinople in that fashion, seizing Constantinople, defeating the last Roman emperor and taking over the church of Hagia Sophia, in which they took that church and used it as a prototype for a mosque. That was the first prototype mosque in world history. You see on the picture of my books, Historical Origin of Islam, you see not only the Hagia Sophia, but you will see those minarets erected outside of that church. So now, with that being done, or let's say 14 years before that, before the Ottoman Turks broke through that wall and seized the city of Constantinople, these 12 humanists, like I mentioned before, who received the seat of Christianity from John the Eighth, 14 years before that, they went and plundered the Hagia Sophia. They plundered the Hagia Sophia. And they took back from the outskirts of Rome, they were given a portion of land by the Roman authorities in 1444. That portion of land that was given to these 12 humanists on the outskirts of Rome is where the Vatican is built today, near the catacombs. Very important, near the catacombs. That was done in 1444. And with that being said, those 12 humanists asked a people, a group known as the Moors, to come in and build them a church and build them what is known as the Vatican, which they came in and built the Vatican beginning in 1445. They broke ground. They came over and surveyed the land in 1444, and they began to break ground in 1445 to build the second seat of Christianity. The second seat of Christianity is over there today in the Vatican. The Vatican, as I speak today, is only a replica of the double-walled city of Constantinople, where the first seat in the world's first Christian church was built, the Hagia Sophia, over in Constantinople. Today, Constantinople is known as Istanbul, Turkey. It's over there in northeast Africa, known today by its political name of the Holy Land, or land of the Bible, whatever name that you want to apply to it. That's what that land over there is represented today. The Holy Land, the land of the Bible, and but it's still northeast Africa by way of geographics. You cannot take a land and move it out and put it in someplace else because you want to do that. Okay? And so they call that land over there the Middle East, which is a political name. They made that land over there the land of the Bible, which it goes into another history. They made that land over there the Holy Land, which goes into another history. But anyway, so when that seat was moved, Christianity became Europeanized. The history of the real true history of Christianity is not told today. But I, Walter Williams, know that history. And I have expounded on that history many times over the same program that you hear me now. But anyway, we're going to move forward by letting the listening audience know the true history of Christianity was hidden, still hidden today. So when that seed of Christianity moved into Europe, the Europeans changed Christianity. Today, as I speak, the world of humanity is getting what I call European Christianity. They're not getting the real, true history of Christianity, how it was created by our Melkite Coptic African ancestors for the Greeks. Not for them, but did this for the Greeks, for the Europeans. So when the seed of Christianity moved out of Africa, the Europeans, to keep the world from knowing the true history of Christianity, they changed history of Christianity. So today, as I speak, the world is getting European Christianity. Okay? And they did that by commissioning an artist by the name of Leonardo da Vinci to paint a painting and a picture called The Last Supper. And they attached a story to The Last Supper. You know, Julius Iscariot, Peter left his family to follow Jesus, and all that kind of stuff. And they attached narrative stories to it. Now, the person that in history attached the narrative stories to the painting was Desiderius Erasmus, who was the playwright, the one that created the world's first New Testament Bible, the Novum Instrumentum. He was a playwright, and he attached stories to that picture. So that's part of Western Christianity. The second painting he did was the crucifixion. It's Jesus being crucified on the cross. Erasmus attached a story to that about Pontius Pilate and the Jews bringing Jesus to Pontius Pilate to be killed and so forth and so on. And then the third picture he painted was that of Mary Magdalene. And a picture, stories was attached to that. Said that Mary Magdalene came to the tomb of Jesus, a portion of the tomb of Jesus. She saw the tomb, the rock had been rolled back from the tomb. And she looked down in the tomb was empty, and Jesus said, I went on up to heaven to be with his Father God. So forth and so on. So that's how they changed Christianity. Today's Christianity is being used in that fashion today. See? So now, you've had the Ottoman Turks were over there, who took over and usurped the land that the Byzantine rulers, the emperors had ruled until they began, the Byzantine rulers began to call to Europe for a crusade. They called to Europe in 1096, the world's first crusade, for those rich barons to send their armies over there in northeast Africa, known today as the Middle East, a political name. And the first respondents to that call in history was Walter the Penniless and Peter the Hermit. Walter the Penniless came out of Germany, and Peter the Hermit came out of France. By the time they got to over in northeast Africa, they were so haggard and their armies were so tattered that they couldn't do Alexis I, Clementos, who was a Roman ruler who called for them to come. And the second group coming into northeast Africa from Europe was a group that came from the army of the Baron Solomon Isaac, alias Rashid, or called Rashid. Baron Solomon Isaac, alias or called Rashid. He sent his army under the leadership of Godfrey of Bouillon. and his brother Baldwin over there in 1099. And so in 1099, they settled, that army settled in what was known today as Jerusalem. Okay? So that is how they got over there in that hemisphere. And so after being over there in that hemisphere, they eventually got back into Europe. So I'm skipping parts of history to not make it so long of a narration so you can understand where the Europeans come from. Now, you know that part of history. You know that part of the Europeans' history. A portion of it. I didn't give it to you all because it would take me too long to narrate. I gave you bits and pieces of it. Which is enough for you to put together the understanding of what I was trying to tell you in this part one of the history of and the origin of the European. Now, let's go back into Europe now. We're going to go back into Europe. And when you open the curtains into Europe, you will find darkness. In other words, the Europeans does not know a beginning history of themselves in Europe. The only history that they can glean for themselves is the history that was created by them in the presence, in the country of our ancestors, those Africans known in history as the ancient Egyptians. And the reason why they know that is because our ancestors documented that history. That's the reason why we know about the Nicene Council and Council of Constantinople and Council of Ephesus, Council of Constantinople II, and so forth and so on. We know that because our ancestors were literate and they used their alphabet to document that history. Now, the reason why the Europeans in Europe does not know a history of themselves is because they had no alphabet to document their history. That's number one. Secondly, they had nothing, and they still have nothing in Europe today. If you open up the curtains to Europe, you will find darkness. There's nothing there that the Europeans can show the world that they created in Europe of greatness. The only thing they can show the world is a dark picture of Europe, with them coming on the stage in the 1400s and the 1500s, the 15th and 16th centuries of world history. Now, who brought them out of the darkness into the light was an African by the name of Manuel Chrysaorus. Now, I spoke to you of the world's first Christian church, the Hagia Sophia, which was first began to build in 532, finished December 27, 537. In that church housed the first university for hand-picked Europeans to go to learn how to read and write. They were tutored by African scholars in that church and the world's first university for Europeans. They were tutored by African scholars. So now, here you come to the time of the European Renaissance era, the 15th and 16th centuries, the 1400s and the 1500s. An African scholar born in Constantinople who taught the Hagia Sophia came into Europe in 1397. His name was Manuel Chrysaorus. He's documented in history. But when you put up Manuel Chrysaorus, they'll show you a white man, of course. Okay? But he was an African, a teacher at the Hagia Sophia. in 1397, he came into Florence, Italy, and turned the light switch on so Europe could be illuminated for light. So he beckoned them to come out of the darkness into the light switch that he had turned on for them. And he began to teach them in 1397 that set off the beginning of the European Renaissance era of the 1400s and the 1500s. Okay? So the 15th and 16th century. So he taught them at the Curia in Florence, Italy. The Curia, like I mentioned before, C-U-R-A means college. So he began to teach them, and other teachers from that church followed suit behind Manuel Chrysostom, and they went into Florence, Italy to teach. They went into Ferrara, Italy to teach. These are Africans who did this, who brought, let's say, literacy to Europe. Not no Europeans. They had no alphabet to bring literacy. So they had to depend on Africans coming out of Constantinople, out of the Church of Hagia Sophia, the world's first university for Europeans, the world's first Christian church, until they were able to learn from these Africans and be able to teach themselves and others in the future of Europeans to follow. See, so quite naturally, they're going to erase that history out of history, erase the Africans, what they did to start the Renaissance era out of Africa, out of Europe. They're going to erase that. They're going to erase that. I want the world to know that. But this is what the second area of the European existence came into being. It's when these Africans, under Manuel Chrysostom, came, who was born in northeast Africa, today called the Middle East. He was born in Constantinople, made his way into Europe in 1397, turned the light switch on, and so the Europeans can come out of the darkness into the light. And that's how these Europeans got into history, and got into history by the teachings. Both times, when Alexander came in, we taught him the Greeks then. And when the Renaissance era of Europe came in, we taught the Europeans under the tutelage of those Africans coming out of the world's first university and world's first Christian church for the Europeans. Now, quite naturally, they're not going to tell the world this. They're not going to tell the world this. They set about to steal the legacy of our ancestors, the legacy that was left to us, the Africans, who are descendants of the ancient Egyptians, the Africans who are in America calling themselves African Americans, blacks, and Negroes. See? They're not going to tell the world that they stole our legacy. They're going to steal our legacy and walk around us and miseducate us, genocide our minds to keep us from knowing what had happened to us as a people and what has happened to our ancestors, the ancient Egyptians. They did this on purpose. So that, what I've told you within this last hour or so, is how the European came about and how he came into the world discipline of history. So that's how he came into existence. See, if it wasn't for our ancestors trying to civilize him and teach him, which they failed to do, because the European does not have a, let's say, a spiritual nature in order to receive what was given to them by our ancestors. They have a nature that is foreign to civilization, that is foreign to humanity, that is foreign to being a civilized and a civil person. They don't understand that. Our ancestors and us as a descendant of ancestors, they're trying to civilize this European for 2,000 2,353 years. We've been trying to civilize this European, beginning with our ancestors, the ancient Egyptians, and continuing with us as an African people for 2,353 years. And he doesn't get it. He thinks that he has to go around and take what he wants from people all over the world, which he did. He terrorized, like I mentioned before, every inch of this earth, and all the people living in this earth, including himself. He terrorized Europe, all the people in Europe. He terrorized all the people living around the planet called Earth. He terrorized them, stole from them, murdered them, killed and maimed them, told them lies, took their culture and cut it off. He did all these heinous things to mankind, including himself, in order for in his mind, to make himself great. You don't need to do all that, see? But he did it anyway, and he's still doing it, and he still don't understand that you don't have to do that. All you got to do is tell the truth, as to who you are. Okay? He wants to hide all of that by his deeds that he's done to mankind. So with that, Brother Tarhaka, I'm going to end that part of the lecture and turn it over to you to continue where you want to take up. Brother Tarhaka?
All right, Dr. Williams, I thank you so much. You did a fantastic job. I was over here in the chat room, but I was listening to every word that you say, and I hope that everybody took some good notes. And what I'm going to do right now, because you've been talking for quite a while and dropping some real information that I hope that everybody wrote down. But I want to say that I've been doing some research on some other lectures that occurred, and I ran across a little information by James Baldwin. And I'm going to take a little break, and when we come back, then we can open up the phone lines, because I see we got some callers with their hand raised and stuff. We'll take a little quick break, and when we come back, then we can proceed. This is an interview that television people try to cover up. But we finally will put it out, and I need to know what y'all opinion is, and then we'll proceed. Okay? So just relax. You can get you some water, get you a snack or whatever, but don't turn this down.
Baldwin, take one.
White people go around, it seems to me, with a very carefully suppressed terror of black people, a tremendous uneasiness. They don't know what the black face hides. They're sure it's hiding something. What it's hiding is American history. What it's hiding is what white people know they have done and are doing. It's what white people know very well. One thing, and it's the only thing they have to know. If they know this, everything else they say is a lie. They know they would not like to be black here. They know that. Now they know that, and they're telling me lies. They're telling me and my children nothing but lies.
For Baldwin, the truth is that the ghettos of his youth remain, gnawing at the spirit of those who live there.
the poverty is piled high, making it even more inescapable, and making it even more inescapable how thoroughly you're despised. The high-rise slum is a high-crime area almost at once, because what are you going to do with all these children, really, whole families, condemned forever to nothing in the richest city in the world? My best friend, a black boy, jumped off the George Washington Bridge when he was 24 and I was 22. And I was sure that I was going to be next.
Just from despair, or?
From despair, from rage, you know. Because you can get to a place, you know, where you're in battle so often that that's all you can do. You know, you've been beaten so hard. All you can do is your world narrows to a kind of red circle of rage. And you begin to hate everybody, which means you hate yourself. You know, and when that happens, it's over for you.
Baldwin has taken that despair and rage and turned it into novels, theater, and essays. Characters drawn from his family and friends. This fall, Dial Press is publishing his 19th book, a novel called Just Above My Head, the story of a black gospel singer during the civil rights struggle. The gospel church is a theme running through much of Baldwin's work. His father was a minister, and Baldwin himself became a preacher at the age of 13. His play, The Amen Corner, shown in revival at Lincoln Center's Black Theater Festival, was drawn from his own experiences in the pulpit. For many growing up in poverty, the church is the only consolation. When Baldwin left the church, he wanted to do more than to console. Often, Baldwin speaks to youngsters who grew up as he did, letting them know the future holds a place for them. On this day, he spoke at the Police Athletic League in Harlem.
A writer might be a dancer, might be a carpenter, might be an architect, might be a junkie, might be any number of things.
You think there's still a chance for today's black writer?
There never was a chance for a black writer. Come, what's your name? Jeffrey. Listen, a writer, black or white, doesn't have much of a chance, right? Nobody wants a writer until he's dead. But to answer your real question, there's a greater chance for the black writer today than there ever has been.
The children asked him the same question I wanted answered. Why did he move to Paris?
Paris is very important to me because I was able to, I was able to take a deep breath, and I was able, this may sound a very corny way to put it, but I wanted to find out where being black ended, where I began, or vice versa. I mean, there's some things that happened to me because I was Jimmy, and some things that happened to me because I was black. And I wanted to find out how to get these things together, because I didn't want to spend the rest of my life going around saying, you treat me that way because I'm black.
After attaining worldwide acclaim as a black writer, Baldwin wrote Giovanni's Room, an explicitly homosexual love story. His publishers in New York refused to print it for fear of alienating his newly acquired white, middle-class audience. Baldwin was furious and took the book to England for publication. You published Giovanni's Room very early on in your...
I finished the book in 55.
And that, to deal with homosexuality was difficult. And you already were dealing with, black writer. Mm-hmm. What made you decide to do that?
Well, one could say almost that I didn't have an awful lot of choice. It was something, Giovanni's Room comes out of something which tormented and frightened me, the question of my own sexuality. I used to know when I was younger, a great many men, boys, who were so terrified that they might have homosexual, they might be bisexual, or they might, want to go to bed with a man. You might be able to fall in love with a man. And they were so frightened of that they could never fall in love with anybody else. They were so frightened of men they couldn't touch women. Giovanni's Room comes somewhere out of that.
Did you also feel that you wanted to get it on the record, your own homosexuality, early?
I don't know if that, well, I don't know if I wanted to get it on the record, but I wanted to confront it. I'm very glad that that was done, because it also simplified my life in another way, because it meant that I had no secrets. Nobody could blackmail me. You didn't tell me, I told you.
James Baldwin is one of those lucky people who's never been unsure of his family's love. The oldest of 9 children, he was helped financially by the others during his struggling years in France. Now he's in the States more than in Europe, and with his family more often than not. With the success of his books, he was able to buy a Manhattan apartment building where his mother and several family members live now. Mrs. Baldwin's apartment is a center of activity for the whole family. Did you think he was going to be as big a success and as important?
No, I didn't think that. But I knew that he had to write.
Barbara!
Brothers and sisters and friends of the family were there. Nieces and nephews underfoot.
How's everybody?
He still cannot stage me now.
Conversation ran the gamut of subjects, but Baldwin's mood turned when we spoke of the American attitude toward blacks.
There's a price this republic exacts. Any black man or woman walking, and that is a crime. I paid for that crime in my life, and I don't believe my countrymen anymore. They will not do to him what they failed to do to me. I was 7 years old 47 years ago, and nothing has changed since then. Look. I don't mean it to you personally. I don't even know you. I got nothing against you. I don't know you personally, but I know you historically. You can't have it both ways. You can't swear to the freedom of all mankind and put me in chains.
It sounds as if you believe that slavery put a curse on us somehow.
Well, it is a curse, The American sense of reality is dictated by what Americans are trying to avoid. And if you're trying to avoid reality, how can you face it? If you don't know what is going on in the ghettos of this nation, in the hearts and minds of women and men you see every day, you don't, first of all, in that case, you don't really know what's going on in your own heart and mind. And you have no way of knowing what's going on in the hearts and minds of millions of people on this globe.
You have told people, this nation in particular, a lot of what they don't want to hear.
Yeah, I have. I've tried. You never know. But I tried, yes, to, the song says, wake the children sleeping. I'm supposed to be a disturber of the peace.
Still preaching, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, everybody, we back. We have a caller with his hand raised at area code 312. Dr. Walter Williams, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm here, Brother Tarhaka. Can you hear me?
All right. Yes, sir. You come across loud and clear. I'm going to open up area code 312. Tell us who you are, where you're calling from, and what's your question or comment for our guest. 312, you're on the air.
Okay, yes. Good evening to you, Brother Tarhaka and Professor Williams and your listening audience. This is Brother Yoel calling from the Windy City of Chicago from Underground Bookstore here listening to your broadcast this evening.
All right.
Top of the evening.
Welcome, welcome,
You are,
welcome,
brother.
Brother UL.
Yes, sir.
What you think about this stuff, man? What's your input so far?
Well, it's a subject that I myself would like to know a lot more about because it makes me think about think of more questions than I got answers, of course, at this time as to where these other people come from and how they came about and all of this. And especially when I consider that some of the things that have been said about them as a people, like, for instance, being called the Caucasian or mutant or mutanoid, and words like mutanoid, the Yurugu, like Marimba calls them that in the Yoruba language. She says he's a Yurugu, which means unfinished, not complete. Then you got Gerald Bassi in his book of the Beginnings, calling him, referring to him as the Tamahu, and he breaks down that word as supposedly it's an Egyptian word, he says, and which means Tama, he says is light, white, or no, he says Tamahu. Wait a minute, I can read it better than I can tell it to you. He says that the hold on one second. I get it. He says okay. He says the Tamahu is a light complexioned people. The Egyptians, Tama means people and created, and who is white, light, or ivory. The Tamahu are the created white people. So I don't know where he get that research or whatnot, but I respect his scholarship. As I know that academia doesn't respect his scholarship like that, but he says that about them, and then you got other theories like even Elijah, where Elijah Muhammad got grafted from, so all these terms that refer to these people, and I guess the rest of the people, because if we talk about our legacy and we look across the world and we look at places like China, for instance, sitting on two dynasties that supposedly have been African, or really more specifically having a close association to Moors, how did it go from black to yellow is what I like to know, across the world. And then your European, as we call him, if he's not an original or indigenous to any place, then can you really call him a European? Because that word seems to go back to another word that suggests Europa, or some word that associates that with an African woman, whether artificial or real. So where did all these terms come from, and how did all these other people come into being? Now, personally, I think that for myself, that I think that if you study the science of colors, of course, anybody who knows colors knows that all colors come out of black or the darkness. So does that spill over into the human population, the same analogy, or what? So maybe Professor Williams got an answer for that. But I'm just looking for answers myself to try to explain how it ended up the way it is, and perhaps we might figure out how we ended up at the bottom of all this. When everybody is hating on you, calling you all kinds of bywords and other names and brands and stuff that they're putting on us. So that's my comment. You there,
Dr. Williams?
Oh yes, I'm here. I was waiting for you to come in. So anyway, I hear what you said, Brother Yoel, and those are theories. It goes all the way back to what I've been saying, that no human on earth can tell you how they got here on earth as a human being. So if you can't tell me, I'm not talking about you, Yoel, individually, but you as a whole race of people, of mankind, male, female, if you can't tell me how you got here as a human being, then how can you tell me how the European got here? See? In other words, like I always said, I found myself here on earth at 4 years old. From 0 to 4, I have no idea or no information about Walter Williams, consciously. Tarhaka, I think you said you found yourself at 3. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's when I was in kindergarten.
Okay, so at 3 years, from 0 to 3, you know nothing about Tarhaka. And Yoel, you found yourself here at what age, consciously, on earth?
I guess I'd have to say when white folks terrorized me when they integrated schools.
Okay. What age
Back
was
in the 65. Back in 1965, and I was a sacrificial lamb that they sent to an all-white school. I found out I was here. But before that, a little bit before that, probably I'd say maybe 4, 5 years old.
Okay, so from 4 to 5 years old, Brother Yoel knows nothing about Brother Yoel. You found yourself here. Where did you come from? How did you get here? You don't know. The only thing that you know now, possibly, that your father impregnated your mother while having sexual intercourse with his sperm landing on her egg, and that sperm of your father landing on your mother's egg caused 9 months of incubation for procreation to come forth in the world. The procreation came forth as Brother Yoel, as we know today, as Brother Tarhaka, as we know today, as Brother Walter Williams, as we know today, and so forth and so on. So you got 8 billion humans on this earth of all races, creeds, and colors. They don't know how they got here. The Indian of India can't tell you how he got into India as an Indian. The Chinese can't tell you how he got into China as a Chinese. The European can't tell you how he got into Europe as a European. The African can't tell you how he got into Africa as an African. So what these people are saying out here, such as what you have been quoting, they are quoting and going by theories. They don't know. You ask Gerald Masters, okay, I hear what you said. How did you get here, Mr. Masters? He can't tell you. So how can you say and use this theory which you're bringing forth? How can you, the next person that you quoted, you ask him the same thing. How did you get here, sir, as a human being? He can't tell you. But how can you make up something for the white race? Okay? They tell you, and I heard this many times, that the black race was over in China. There's no evidence of that. There need to be in there. You come from the greatest race of people on earth, so why diminish that? And when you all you have to do is claim ancient Egypt. And when you claim ancient Egypt, white supremacy is over with. So that would be my answer to those theories that you expounded on, Brother Yoel. And I hope that will give you some clarity as to clear up in your mind that these, what you've been hearing all through your adult life and your conscious life, is theories coming from other people. And the other people with these theories can't even tell you how they got here on earth. So how can you theorize about another race of people? Okay? I don't know how white people got here. I don't know how Indians of India got here. I don't know how Chinese people got here. I don't know how Africans got into the continent. I don't know that. I don't know how we got over in this hemisphere. Yes, I know by way of history, but I found myself over here. I don't know how I got here. Okay? I know history, how history said we got over here. That's about it. See, but when a person give you how white folks came about, they're telling you that out of I think our hatred for white people to try to diminish them to the lowest level. All you have to do is use the discipline of history, and they are diminished to the lowest level of humanity. Just their behavior, just with their dead spirituality, spiritually dead, with the inferiority of who they are and how they think. Okay, how they have brought forth uncivilization for themselves, how they created what they have created over here by way of force, by way of savagery, and so forth and so on. So that would be my answer to you, and I hope that you take some of these things and start thinking about what I said. No human on earth know how they got here, so therefore you can't tell me how other humans got here. They said that.
Mm-hmm.
So
I keep hearing a lot of tapping. What's the tapping sound? Sounds like somebody hitting a computer keys.
That's me. I got to cut it out. But y'all continue.
Okay, well, cut it out, Brother Yoel.
Cut it
out, Brother Tarhaka.
Okay.
Okay, so anyway, that would be my answer to you, and some of the things I'd like for you to think about, Yoel.
Okay.
All right. So, who else you got, Brother Tarhaka?
Well, I'm going down here to area code 314. Y'all hold your hat, keep the background noise down. Look at who I'm talking to. But anyway, 314, you on there. Come on in. What's your question, comment for our guest?
Hey, this is Pianki. What's going
Pianki.
on?
Brother Pianki.
Let me tell you something. I would follow Baldwin to the corner. I respect him, but I don't accept his ways. And I'm going to tell you something else. Them people at the church that's praying to go to heaven for the by and by, if they had to work together to make their conditions different to whatever extent, like you see other ethnic groups do, then there could have been a change. But those who have leverage on you, I don't care who they are, it can be in Nigeria, they ain't going to teach you how to take that power from them, because that power equates to equity, wealth. They're not going to do it. So that's going to have to be achieved and done by the people who find themselves in a predicament, if they don't like it, themselves. And you've seen many other ethnic, look at them Afghan refugees that started KFC chicken, Kennedy Fried Chicken, not Kentucky. And then you look at the Indians, the Patels. One came out of Mexico, went to Texas, I think it was El Paso, and stayed at a hotel that was owned by Japanese. Japanese was at the verge of being interned during World War II because they was Japanese nationalists, and this country was fighting the Japanese empire, and blood is thicker than water, so ain't no country going to let a large group of natives of the people they fighting stay behind their lines and don't pay no attention to them. But this Indian, who was of the Patel family, he bought the hotel for $250.
Wow.
And look where they are. Look where they are today, where they extract $28 billion in hotel accommodation. So maybe that's what we know it, because we have seen some do it. Not many, nowhere near enough. But, you just got some people that just want to wait for the return of Jesus or whatever. And I don't blame them if that's what they want to do. Just leave me alone.
Okay. Well, now, Brother Bianchi, I agree with what you're saying, and you make a lot of sense, as always, but I don't put the blame squarely on our people, okay? Because they've had so many restrictions, and you know that as a businessman, You are a businessman. A lot of people don't know that about you, but you are a businessman. And you're a very wealthy man. That I know. Okay? Now, but I discovered, Brother Bianchi, in Webster's Dictionary, 1957 Webster's Dictionary, I was looking for a word, and I came across this word, the color line. That's in Webster's Dictionary. Some of them, you don't find them in all of them. This is how the color line went as a definition in Webster's Dictionary. It says a barrier of political, social, and economic restrictions imposed upon the Negro and other colored races. Draw the color line and keep it. That's what that definition said. So now, we as a race of people has been targeted on purpose not to get ahead. They refuse to give us loans from banks. You know that as a businessman. They refuse to let us socialize in America society. They refuse to do that. They refuse to allow us into politics. When we came out of slavery during that transition from slavery to freedom in 1867, we elected congressmen to Congress. Those men were not slaves that were elected to Congress. They were literate free men during that time. What did they do? They cut that off. They couldn't handle that because we were moving so fast on them. So they brought in Jim Crow laws and so forth and so on. So we as a people, look what they did over there in Tulsa, Oklahoma. The government.
Oh, you know, I want to talk about that.
Yeah, the government took their airplane with bombs in it now. Because anybody can't fly an airplane with bombs in it. It's got to come from the government. And they dropped bombs.
Well,
you know the story about Tulsa.
Well, those were gasoline bombs, Walter. But here's the thing with Tulsa.
But that's
here's
okay.
the thing with Tulsa.
They dropped those gasoline bombs on that community and destroyed 36 blocks of homes, businesses, banks.
Let me ask you a question, Walter. Whose land was that?
What's that?
Whose land was that? And whose buildings were they?
It was the land that was bought and the buildings that was built by our African people in this country.
All right, let me tell you something.
Okay, now hold it. Now let me say this.
All right.
I'm not a American historian. I'm not an African historian. I'm an ancient Egyptian and a historian pertaining to history that's going to relate to that. Now, so what you have to say, brother?
Well, you know, on ancient Egypt in Africa period, DNA sequencing is started to tell a different story, but I'm not going to talk about that. Let's get back to Tulsa. You had the 5 civilized tribes: the Creek, Choctaw, Seminole, Cherokee, and Chickasaw. 1832 treaty where the Creek Indians, Muscovy Creek, they done a treaty with the Confederate States of America because they supported them because they and the Confederate States had a similar interest. Or their interest would have been served if the Confederate States won the war, which they didn't. Their interest was slaves. Creek had slaves big time. And Creek was not just red. Creek was also blacks. Had black skin, should I say. They didn't call themselves black. They called themselves Creek. And they also had black slaves. like we talk about today. All right. The Creek lost...
What year was this, Brother Tarhaka? Brother...
Well,
yeah.
When the Civil War was, when the Confederate States was defeated, the Creek was defeated too. So they had to sign a treaty with the United States government, which required them to move out of their territory.
It's just, I hear what you're saying. It was
about 1860 something, 1864, I believe it was.
What's that got to do with talk?
Well, let me finish telling you the story.
All right.
Lincoln so-called freed the slaves with the Emancipation Proclamation, which he did not do because a proclamation is not a congressional act. Plus, the states that had seceded from the U.S. was no longer under his jurisdiction. Plus, the Indian tribes weren't under his jurisdiction because they were separate nations. Indians didn't. The 13th Amendment outlawed slavery, and what Lincoln had the power to do, you had slaves that went to the Union troops for refuge, and they was declared contraband. So Lincoln, being the chief of the military, told the military to let them go. That was the freeing of slaves, because they was contraband designated by the Union forces. The rest of them he had no control over, especially with the Indians. All right, here we go. Trail of the Tears. You had a treaty in 1866 that required the Creek and those 5 civilized tribes to move out of the Florida area in the southeast.
What year?
The Creek, that was around 1866. It started in April 1866, the treaty with the Creek. It went on into July with the other tribes. The Creek and the Choctaw said they were not freeing their slaves unless you paid for them.
Okay.
Now, that's in the treaty. Hang on, we're going to get to Tulsa. Here we go.
We're going off our topic tonight, but go ahead.
Well, you made mention of Tulsa.
I'm saying, I'm telling Yoel, I'm telling you that we, the reason why we don't get not ahead like we should be is because of what has been put upon us and against us. Okay.
Well, the reason why come we don't get ahead because we keep playing the same old tune that has nothing to do about getting ahead. It's about holding you back.
Oh, then okay. Now
let me finish. Let me finish. Hang on, Walter. Let me finish.
Okay.
Because people don't got interested. So they moved them out of the southeast into the Texas Panhandle. The Creek didn't walk on that journey. They was riding steamships because they was wealthy, which include blacks. They even brought their black slaves with them, and they let them off the boat, and they done some clearing. But they eventually moved in what was at that time Oklahoma, or as always was, Indian territory. It was original territory. So what you call Tulsa, which is now what was, could have said was Tulsa County, that was Creek land. You had Seminole, you had the Creek right there on the next to the Osage Indians. You had the Cherokee to the east, and that was Creek land. In the Creek society, you don't own the land. The land belongs to the society. So Creek was the people that was in Black Wall Street, that you call Black Wall Street. Now, you had native blacks that came out of the Chicago area because at that time Chicago was developing, building and everything. They came over and worked on contracts to build buildings. Now, to let you know what this was, there was a black woman, a girl, 12 years old. Her name was Sarah Reckner. And out of that treaty came the allotments. Every Creek person was allotted 160 acres of land. If you had 4 members in your family, don't care if it was a child, they got 160 acres. 4 times 160 acres is a square mile. On her land, they found oil. And she leased it out to Standard Oil at the time. and they paid her the equivalent today of $5,000 today.
What year was this?
Sarah Reckner, and you can Google her. I say that was probably around 1914, sometime somewhere around there. Sarah Reckner was 12 years old and the richest female, and she happened to be black, and she wasn't a native black. She was an Indian. Her picture's in there. She was...
Okay, now, wait now, hold on. Let me ask you this, Brother Tarhaka, before you go on. Did the people living in the area that's known as Black Wall Street, the people living there that own those businesses and homes and 36 blocks of homes, etc., did they buy that land?
No, you couldn't buy Indian land. Just like you can't buy African land today. You couldn't buy
now, how did they
similar
get there?
thing.
Who let them on that land?
They had been there. They had been there since conception. Indians.
What is conception?
What you call?
Now, hold it now. Hold it. What
let me tell you. Because they came across the Bering Straits, and they were not blacks, Africans, when they came across the Bering Straits. Because they were wherever they had came from before, because they had stayed there for thousands of years.
Okay, but here, Bianca, I hear what you're saying. All I want to know is that the people in Tulsa, Oklahoma, 1921, that the white people wreaked mayhem on them, bombed them, killed over 3,000 people, destroyed 36 boxes of homes, businesses, etc., etc. Were they members of our race?
What you mean? Was some of them black Americans?
No.
The ones that
what they called Negroes.
It's only.
What they called
they
Negroes.
called themselves. Well, they called themselves. The Creek called themselves Creek. They did not want to be American.
Now hold it. I said the people that got bombed on Wall Street. Now, Black Wall, what they call Black Wall.
Well, it depends. It was probably an assortment. It was probably an assortment of both.
Okay. Well, what I'm saying to you, I don't want to get away from our main subject tonight. I hear what you're saying. Okay, that's a good history of what you're saying. But what I'm saying is that when I'm giving you an example of how we all cannot pull up by a bootstrap because they took the strings and the strap out of the damn boots.
Well, this Creek was some of the richest people in the country at the time, and they had slaves, which became freemen, because the government required them to release all their slaves.
I hear what you're saying.
You heard of the Freeman Bureau, don't you? The Freeman Bureau went out of existence in early 1900s. Oklahoma didn't become a state until 1907. Even today, if you commit a crime in Oklahoma, Oklahoma cannot touch you. It's those Creek nations that you go to court for. Now, if you commit a federal crime, it's different. But if you commit the average crime in Oklahoma today and you are a Creek, they cannot touch you. Matter of fact, they had the first Supreme Court justice. His name was Jesse Franklin.
I got you.
And he had the ability to kill you, put you to death. But anyway, I'm going to let y'all get back to your topic.
Yeah,
if you want me to come on and talk about that, Tarhaka, I would be willing to come on and talk about it a little bit more detail.
Yeah, I'm gonna, you come on, man. We're gonna hold a conversation.
Because people have been deceived, like this thing they had this Juneteenth to supposed to free the slaves. Lincoln did not free any slaves. The only slaves he could free was the ones that was in the care of the Union troops, and they declared them as contraband. And that's how he done it, because he was over the military. He could not tell Indians what to do. He could not tell those states what to do because they were no longer. If that's the case, then Mexico can go to Texas today and say, you come back to us. They can't do that.
All right, well, Bianchi, what I'm going to do, My email address is tarhaka57@gmail.com. Send me your information. And that's it over here, but I got so much paper on the desk, I'm going to have to find it, and we'll set this thing up.
As long
But,
as that paper ain't no bills, you're all right. Long as paper.
I deal with all that, man. I teach contract law.
All right, let Walter get back to
anyway,
his narrative.
All right, well, wait a minute. Before we do that, let me bring Brother Yoel in. Brother Yoel, you still woke?
Yeah, I'm here, brother. I'm still woke.
All right. Well, before we go to Dr. Williams again, tell me what you think about this thing yourself. Because you got a whole bookstore now. I know you know.
Well, which thing you was referring to right now?
Well, we're talking about the European, man, the beginning history of the European.
Oh, well, that I kind of hinted. I got more questions than I do answers to that question, even with a whole bookstore at home too. Okay.
Okay. Well, what's your
that bookstore is at home too, and I still don't have the answer to that yet. All I know is I got all these theories, and that people will weigh. Well, as Professor Williams said, theories of where he came from and who he is, and all I know is that it seems that no matter where we are, I mean, they would have us think that we were sitting on our hands in Africa until the Europeans showed up. But that's not the case. No matter where they go, they run into us. Whether it be South America, Brazil, Peru, they run into us. China, you name it, all these places all throughout the world, seems like we were all over the place, but they would have us thinking they've written their history as if we was waiting in Africa till they showed up and they started navigating the world. That's all I know.
Well, you know something that you want to study is DNA sequencing. DNA the sequences tells a whole different story. You know, blacks in America has about 3% Neanderthal DNA within their system. But when you go and take the DNA of Africans on the continent, it's hardly found whatsoever. But check out DNA sequencing. This has begun to look at things in a different picture because basically what it's doing is taking people according to their DNA, the mitochondria, and also that which is produced by both the female and the male.
But my question would be is who's writing the truth on that DNA sequencing, though, because when they get to talking about your ancestry, doing your ancestry through these Ancestry.com and all of that, it seems to me that nobody actually ends up in Egypt. What is that about? Why don't anybody end up? They always end up in West Africa.
Tens of thousands, if not millions, of people across the country, the world, have submitted their samples to tell what their ancestors are. And they keep those samples in order to put this picture together. Like I say, we talk about the Native American, actually the indigenous, the ones that came across the Bering Strait. And it wasn't just humans that came across the Bering Strait. You had animals that came across and also plants. And they came down through Washington along the coastline. They went down in the south. They went down into Mexico, Central America, and South America. Then they came across our southern borders. They always stayed around water, which would be sensible because they got a lot of their food out of the ocean.
Okay, so were these people who did this, were those people the Olmec people?
No. Those were not.
Well,
but
they come after the Olmec or before?
Well, we're talking about going back over 200,000 years ago when the second migration that left out.
Mr. Williams, you told me that if you go back farther than 10,000 years, disregard that.
Well, we're talking about, no, DNA can go back quite a ways, but I've been on digs in Egypt that was revealing 65,000 years there at Haliwada. But the DNA sequences tells a pretty accurate picture. I mean, it's just what it is.
Can I trust the storyteller of that?
Well,
that's why we're in the condition we're in today, as far as I'm concerned,
no,
because the
you either got to
storytellers been telling us lies.
You got to do one or two things. You got to get out there and do the research yourself, or you're going to have to do like what you're doing now, get it out of books that you sell. There's somebody else who did do the research.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Well, let me bring Dr. Williams in. You want to come on in and
I can't hear you talking in the chamber. What you said, Brother Tarhaka?
I said, can you come on in and answer Bianchi? Can you hear me?
No. Let Walter go ahead back to his lecture.
No,
I respect Walter. I ain't going to be arguing with him.
Yeah, see, I don't want to go off the subject matter.
Yeah, get back on the subject matter. I'm sorry for taking you off of it.
We can't talk on the subject matter. I'm going to be silent. Or I'll just hang up and call it a day. You know, one of those things. But what I'm saying, the subject matter is not what we're talking about, some Indians and stuff like that. Okay? So, I'm not talking against it. I mean, so that's not a subject matter. That's all I'm saying.
You didn't take no shots, did you, Walter? Walter,
Bianchi, I've been knowing him a long time. So
Walter, did you take any shots?
Huh?
Did you take any shots?
Did I take a shot? Yes.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. All right, I'll see you guys.
Okay.
Wait a minute. Don't throw a rock and run, man. What do you mean? Oh, my goodness. Tell us about that.
They're going to kill you, Walter. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, then I'll be 90 years old in August. It's 2 months.
You that old?
Yeah, I'll be 90 years old, so,
I didn't know you was that old. I didn't know you was that far up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I got a good mind. I got good health. I don't take no medication.
You remember you were doing a lecture here, and I took you, Dr. Ben, and colleagues to the Red Lobster, and you got to arguing with Dr. Ben, and he's going to conk you with that cane?
It goes way back.
I had to save you.
Right, sure did. Like I tell people, I told people when you first came on there tonight, I said, me and Bianca go way back in the 90s, early 90s and so forth. So anyway, I like to stick to our subject matter and keep going forward like that.
Get back on the subject matter. Walter's done a lot of good work. His historical origin of Christianity is a masterpiece and one of the books that I've read, and I find it to be very accurate. And but nobody wants to believe in it. But that's just the way it is.
Well, that's part of life, and we have to keep on pushing.
You do a excellent lecture on the council meetings. And we always wanted you to do them when you came around us, because those council meetings tell an excellent story of some of the things that people are living with today.
Correct.
Well, Dr. Williams, what is your recommendation for us in dealing with the chamber? Can you hear me now?
Well, it's a little better, but you need to come out of that echo chamber, but go ahead.
Hold on, man. Let me look at this thing here.
There you go.
Okay. All right. What I want to know is, what is our position today in the United States of America in dealing with these Europeans today? Now, we done brought all the information up on the backdrop, the ancient story, and all that. And in my personal opinion, and I don't mean no offense.
Wait now, hold up. You breaking up and you in the echo chamber. Get back on where I can hear you.
I don't know. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right. What I was about to say, and I don't mean no offense, deal with Bianca first. First of all, when it comes to the DNA thing, my question is, I personally don't do the DNA thing. Our people don't have the laboratories and all that, and they haven't told me anything about the DNA. And I look at it this way. If we were the ones who brought the light of civilization to the world, and we taught them how to read and write and how to take a bath. In my personal opinion, they ain't qualified to tell me nothing about the DNA. And the DNA belonged to me anything. Anyway, I don't deal with that, and I ain't trying to listen to none of that. I ain't took no shot, and I ain't wearing no mask. However, what I want to deal with now, because since we are going to stay to the topic, the beginning of his history, and I look at the word history, that's just exactly what it is story. And then we have our story. So I did an investigation on both, and I come to the conclusion that what we are dealing with, we're dealing with something that has a different nature. And in order for us to deal with that, we're going to have to understand it and be prepared to do whatever we got to do by any means necessary. Now, that's not just stated like Malcolm stated back in the day, which I'm not above that. However, we have to look at things today in the light of reality. And we have these lectures every month, all day long, and go back and forth and debate. But what I look for is solutions to the problem. I just want to put that out there.
You say what now to the problem?
Solutions.
Okay, solutions. Well, we're giving solutions on your radio program. The solution is find your way back to ancient Egypt, Africans born in America, who call themselves African Americans, blacks, and Negroes. Find your way back to ancient Egypt and claim your ancestors as being the ancient Egyptians, and that's your solution. Now, if you don't do that, you're groping in the dark. I keep telling you that and telling you that and telling you that. They set out to keep ancient Egypt from us on purpose. About 10 years ago or more, my wife and I went into Washington, D.C. We went to the Smithsonian Institute. They had an exhibit. They were exhibiting all the countries in Africa. The countries in the continent of Africa total 54. That includes Egypt. We got to the exhibit, went through all the exhibit. They were showing each country the language and their culture and so forth and so on. But there was one country missing, Egypt. They had 53 countries, and they left out Egypt. And we went up to the people who were on charge that day and told them, where is ancient Egypt? Where's Egypt? Why did you all cut Egypt out? There's a reason for that. They don't want you to know about ancient Egypt. Once you claim, I keep telling you this, once you claim your ancestors as being the ancient Egyptian, white supremacy is over with. Okay? They can't. So you have to claim ancient Egypt. They keep it out of the school system, away from us. They teach us about Negroes and black Sambos and anything but the ancient Egyptians. I keep telling you, I've been hopping and hopping for years. Find your way back to ancient Egypt. When I told you, Brother Tarhaka, you said you were Moor. I showed you where the Moors and the ancient Egyptians are one and the same. You were happy as a sister in a CC camp. Okay? You were elated. Okay? Now, I keep telling people, been telling Yoel, I've been telling everybody, find your way back to ancient Egypt and claim yourself as being an ancient Egyptian. Because the European is not going to tell you that. They're going to cut that out from you. They don't want you to know that. Why? Because they have stole our legacy that our ancestors left us. The immortal legacy that our ancestors, the ancient Egyptians, left us. They stole it. They walk around the world as if they own everything, that they know every damn thing, and they taught the world this, and they ain't taught the world a damn thing. So when you claim ancient Egypt, that's it. The conversation is over with. So we have to get up to the world stage and say, world, the people that you have been calling and Negroes and thinking that we were Negroes and blacks and African Americans, we are descendants of the ancient Egyptians. People who brought civilization to all of humanity, who brought civilization to this planet that we call Earth. Okay? That's what you have to do. Unless you're talking nothing. So you do that, make that your base, then you can go out and start talking. But if you don't have ancient Egypt as your ancestral base, then you're wasting your time. That's what I have to say about that.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Williams. Pianki, hold on, Brother UL. Pianki, you still with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Are you in agreement with what Dr. Williams just said?
Well, people can claim if that's what they want to do. Apparently, they're just not doing it. But people have all the right in the world to self-identify if they want to.
I'm not talking about individual people. We as a whole group. You identify yourself as being black. You identify yourself as being African American. You identify yourself as being a Negro. And all those names does not names that you can attach to land or anything like that. So
yeah, you're right.
Is the world's first and oldest civilized people and place where civilization came from. Okay? So claim that. And then all this other stuff, this confusion is over with. You claim that. If you don't claim that, you're going to be confused all the time. We as a race of people, I'm not talking about individuals. I'm talking about 50 or more million of us have to claim ancient Egypt. When you do that, white supremacy is over with. Now, I can't make it no plainer than that. I'm talking about not individual. I'm not talking about no DNA, none of that. I'm talking about actual facts. Look in the faces of who they call the ancient Egyptians. There's a book that came out in a magazine, Life magazine. You always got a copy of that. Because I sent them to the books, to the Walgreens to buy it in 2016. It came out in the February, March, and April edition, talking about how Howard Carter found the tomb of King Tut over there. And they put a picture of King Tut on the front page of that book. And I took that page and had it reproduced on a T-shirt and a sweatshirt I wear every day. Okay? And that picture of King Tut is showing you who we are as a people if you open your mind up. So when you look at that picture, you see us every day in that face of King Tut. That's the reason why I told you go down there and get it so you can look at that, hoping that it'll wake up something inside of you. Wake up something.
Okay.
Stop
okay. Brother Yoel, the same question. Are you in agreement with what Dr. Williams has just stated as the solution, Brother Yoel?
Well, I believe so, but I am. But my thing is, though, I keep trying to get out of that conversation is how far or what does that look like, and does that make it to paper? Because there's more. That some things that you put on paper, and you don't just when you make a claim, that comes with a status or a how the rest of the people in the world view you, and what so that means that if just claiming that puts me in my proper status, then okay, cool. But that's what I'm trying to get back to, getting back in my proper status so these folks can recognize their mamas and their daddies and treat me like their mamas and their daddies. That's what I'm looking to, and if I have to do that on paper, I want to do that on paper as well. That's why I keep asking what does it look like, or how do you do that? Because it can't be just lip services. It seems that, to me, from what I studied and what I found, is you got to go beyond that. Vocalizing that is the first step. Yes, but what's the next step? That's my question.
Let me answer that before I go to the next caller. First of all, and I've stated this over and over and over, everything in America operates on contract, under what's commonly referred to as contract law. But the United States of America, which is a giant federal corporation, we keep thinking it's a country, no, it ain't. It's just a bunch of corporations. They done been sold that long time ago. However, the corporation does not interfere with your right to make contracts. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights put out by the U.S. said that every man has a right to a nationality, and every man has a right to change his nationality. So it all boils down to if you look at all the contracts that come to your home, the light bill, the water bill, the mortgage, the bank, the Social Security, whatever it is, those are contracts created by them, and these are the contracts they enforce. My question to you is, what type of contracts are you going to create, and how are you going to enforce them? Let me go ahead, since there's no interference, let me go ahead and open up another phone line on area code 708. I'm going to open up 708 and let them in. Area code 708. Tell us who you are, where you're calling from, what's your question or comment for our guest.
Peace. This is our brother in Cassie-Beck Bay, also known as Op Zombie, and I'm calling from the Chicago area. And I just was listening. Yes, sir, Brother Tarhaka. Thank you again for letting me, once again, it's my second time. I know that you guys were talking and I was listening. I just wanted to be kind of quick. So excuse me if I'm quick-winded, Brother Tarhaka, but I just wanted to say that I was listening and I enjoyed it. But I heard Brother Yoel say something that struck a chord with me, because though I'm not like the best type of scholar, I know that Dr. Walter Williams, though, really opened up a paradigm shift, the way that we should be thinking, because that Bible there, people can't grasp, you can't really understand the Bible until you read what the brother is talking about, Brother Dr. Walter Williams is talking about in his books, because it just left something on our mind. I do have a comment, and then I got a question. My comment real quickly is, I know that because I've been using the word Moorish American a lot, but now my mind is starting to grow because of the brother. But I know that during the Almoravids and Almohads, there was a war. And that is the war that marked the end of all of the, you could say, commonwealth or stockpiling or legacy of wealth that was building up, that was collected by the Islamic kingdom. And they opened up into Africa during the 1600s, the Westerners, after the Almoravids lost the war to the Almohads. That was the beginning of the downfall of all of the accumulated legacy of wealth that was in Islam, that was centered, that they were trying to protect from the Romans. So, so what I'm saying is that that during the 1600s, that is when they got access to everything, and that's when you see the slavery's popping up. Europeans got guns now, and all this stuff, craziness is going on, and that is what happened over in China, because a lot of us, I thought the same thing about the Song Dynasty and the Xia Dynasty, but there's a picture on the internet real quickly of an African. It was released by someone named Dark Cloud that was on the forum, and he was either part of that lineage or exposing that lineage, because they keep pictures like that in hopes that if they would get some kind of reparations. But the picture clearly shows an African brother and African entourage that was in the Qing Empire that was being used by the Qing, because the Africans there knew the culture, they knew the law, they knew the Chinese law, they knew everything, because they had built that empire. So this was going on all the way up until the British, before the British came. So it never stopped. It wasn't just that dynasty. It kept going. So my question to Dr. Walter Williams is, is that there's another word that my vocabulary is building in from listening to you about dealing with this Bible and people having a bad time trying to deal with this Bible. But because it's such a beast, there's a word that you use, Brother Dr. Walter Williams, with spurious writers. It was in regards to Erasmus using materials that he found to formulate the Bible. And it seems to be, to me, just kind of like to just talk on that real quick. It seems to me that whatever he had his hands on seemed to have some kind of idea to me, giving me the idea, I should say, that there was possibly ancient Egyptians who were stuck in this Greek raid or Greek problem that they had, and they would write in a particular way to preserve their culture. But I don't know. I'll leave it up to you to answer. But that's the question, because you use, I don't know if I'm saying it right. It's called, I know I'm saying something about spirits.
Slow down. Slow down. You have to just slow down. You'll be all right. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Spurious writers, something about, like the word sphere or spherical, basically dealing with a sphere of thought. But I don't know. I heard you say it once or twice, and then it's like, because, you know, there's so much information coming at me at one time. Can you tell me more about that? Because I read that he purposely didn't want to use the older content. Like he avoided certain materials, and then certain stuff he didn't want. He used to develop this Bible that he did. The chapters that you mentioned about Mark, Luke, and John. You know, so I can tell that it's something he was avoiding. Were these spurious writers, I hope I'm saying it right, were they possibly ancient Egyptians that were during that time in the Greek, being oppressed by the Greeks, writing in a particular way to preserve their culture, and then they got twisted into something else?
No, here, my brother, the word spurious writers means books of unknown authorship. They don't know who wrote.
Okay.
Spurious writers, books of unknown authorship. Apocryphal writers, that means the same thing, books of unknown authorship. Okay? Now, you got to go back. You know, I think I have given, have you ever heard my History of the Bible lecture on Tarhaka show?
I heard it, but it's like every time I listen to it, I get new information. It's like I can't. It's a learning curve that I'm going through right now. Yes, but I've listened to the whole thing.
Okay, you got to realize one thing, that the first created Bible and the first printed Bible was in 1475. Prior to that, there was no Bible, no place on earth. That you got to understand. The first created and printed Bible was formulated by Johannes Reuchlin and two of the Italian peers, so Ficino, Pico della Mirandola. Those three men formulated the world's first Bible on earth. Okay, and that first Bible on earth was created in Italy, in a town called Bologna, Italy, and they used the Greek alphabet to create that Bible. You see, and they called it the Hebrew Bible. Okay, now that's the world's first Bible. See, I gave a history of the Bible, I think about twice, I think, on the same program. But anyway, if you have a copy of that, or, you know, then you can listen to it again, or either Brother Tarhaka will have me back again giving the history of the Bible, and then we can go over it again. But now, that was in 1475. The Roman Catholic Church was only 30 years old when that first Bible came out in 1475, because the Roman Catholic Church and the Vatican was started being created in 1445. So 30 years later, here comes the Bible. The Roman Catholic Church had no literature for their hero. Their hero was Jesus the Christ. They had no literature for that. Now, you have a paper and pen?
Yes, let's see, hold on. Yes, I do. Because I wanted to ask you about the spirits, that the unknown authors, because it...
I'm going to get to that. Just take...
Okay, yeah, that's just blowing me
take down
right
what
now. Okay.
I want you to write Pfeffercorn, P-F,
P-F,
P-F, E-F-F, E-R. No, P-F, like in Frank. P-F, E-F-F.
Yes.
You got it? Say it back to me.
P as in Paul, F as in Frank, E as in Edward, F as in Frank.
All right. E-R.
Yeah.
K-O-R-N. Pfeffercorn.
Oh, right.
You got it? P-F,
yep.
E-F-F, E-R, K-O-R-N.
O-R-N. Got it.
Okay? And you put dash Rushalin. R-U-E.
Yep.
Got that? R-U-E. C-H-L-I-N. Rushalin.
Wow.
R-U-E-C-H-L-I-N. You put down controversy. Controversy.
Yeah.
And that controversy came about in the year of 1508 and 1510. Okay?
Okay.
I want you to pull that up on your iPhone, or you could go to the encyclopedia and pull it up. But you can put it up on your iPhone, and that'll give you some idea about that Bible. Okay? So
wow.
It was Rushalin and his two Italian counterparts, partners, Massimo Ficino, Pico della Mondo, who formulated the Old Testament that we know today as the Old Testament. Okay? The Roman Catholic Church had no literature for their object. The object of the Roman Catholic Church was Jesus the Christ. They had no literature for Christ. Okay? Until Desiderius Erasmus was commissioned by Alexander VI, the Pope Alexander VI, to write something on the object of Christianity, Jesus the Christ. Erasmus was a playwright at that time. He wrote in his plays The Enchiridion, Praise of Folly, and Adages. Those are his three known playwright dramas that he wrote. Now, he was asked and commissioned by Pope Alexander VI to write something on the object of Christ. It took him 16 years before he came out with what is known as the Novum Instrumentum. The Novum Instrumentum consists of the three synoptic gospels of Mark, Matthew, and Luke. John, they always tell you, came later. John did come later in the King James Version of the King James Bible in 1611. But Erasmus wrote Mark, Matthew, and Luke. And he also wrote 1 and 2 Corinthians, which is called Paul, or the Pauline letters. And he also wrote 1 and 2 Corinthians and 1 and 2 Peter. And he wrote Galatians and epistles to the Romans. Those are his 9 manuscripts that he contributed to the Novum Instrumentum. The Novum Instrumentum came out in 1516. 1519, they changed it to Novum Testamentum. In 1535, they changed it to the New Testament. You see? Now, you got today, as I speak, you have 28 books of the New Testament. Erasmus wrote 9 of those 28. Okay? Leaving 18, I believe, 17 or 18 left books in the New Testament. Those remaining books, other than the first 9 books that I mentioned about that contribute to Erasmus' writing, those other 18 books are written by spurious writers, apocryphal writers, books of unknown authorship. You don't know who wrote those books.
Wow. Wow.
You see that? And that goes with the New Testament. The Old Testament. You got 39 books of the Old Testament. The first 5 books of the Old Testament can be attributed to Moses' Maimon, called Maimonides. But then you got 34 other books remaining in the Old Testament that you don't know who wrote them. So it was written by apocryphal writers and spurious writers, books of unknown authorship. So that's some of the history of that Bible, you know. So anyway, I hope that clears up some things for you, my brother.
Yes, sir, Brother Dr. Martin, thank you very much. Yes, sir, did.
And the people who wrote the Old Testament didn't call it old. If it wasn't nothing else, it was the
Bible,
people who...
Brother Bianchi.
Huh?
The Old Testament came about when it was both books was put up on the one cover. In 14.
Which one came first?
The Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament.
The Old Testament, right?
Yes.
So what I'm saying is, the people that wrote it didn't call it old because it wasn't nothing else.
I said that already, Brother Bianchi. They called it the Hebrew Bible. I said.
Well, I know, but what I'm saying is that it's names that people use today calling it old. You don't hear nobody calling it Hebrew Bible in black community. They call it Old Testament.
Hold it. I'm telling you about from the origin of these books. Okay? It was called, when it was made, the Hebrew Bible. Today, it's called the Old Testament. And the reason why that happened was a man by the name, a Swedish theologian by the name of Jacob van Liesveld, in 1527, took both books and put them on one cover and called the Hebrew Bible the Old Testament. And he called the Novum Testament the New Testament. That's how those names got brought about. That's the historical part of it.
All right, hold it right here, fellas. Before we go on to the next caller, I want to go over something.
You're in a chamber, Brother Tarhaka.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to go over this one more time, and then we can take it from there because I got another caller with his hands raised, and the clock is counting down. One more time. 1250 BC, depending on your source, with the publication of 1250 BC, depending on your source, with the publication. Let me speak, man. Let me talk. With the publication of 2 books of folklore, the Odyssey and the Iliad, created an author named Homer, who we have little information about in the book. A History of the Modern World by R.R. Palmer and Joel Colton. They tell us the following. Europeans were by no means the pioneers of human civilization. Half of man's recorded history had passed before anyone in Europe could read or write, the priests of Egypt began to keep written records between 4,000 and 3,000 BC. But more than 2,000 years later, the poems of Homer were still being circulated in the Greek city-states by the word of mouth. Shortly after 3000 BC, while the pharaohs were building the first pyramids, Europeans were creating nothing more distinguished than huge garbage heaps. Now, I wanted to go back over that one more time because the brother called in and he was asking about the spurious writers. But we have spurious people, too, that are invisible and who have never existed. We did an in-depth research on Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, Hippocrates, Pythagoras, and all these so-called people that's supposed to have the information. But we discovered that doing our research, we could not find any historical record on these people. They came out of the clear blue sky and was congratulated or exonerated as having been written all of these hundreds of thousands of books. Impossible. It didn't exist. So in my personal opinion, there should be no argument or debate over these individuals and what they contributed, because in my personal opinion, they didn't contribute nothing, and they did not exist.
Well, Homer was a compilation of authors. He wasn't just one person.
Hold it. Brother Tarhaka, you mentioned that Homer, what you read in the book, they said that Homer wrote 12,000 BC, right?
Let me look again. Let me make sure.
No, it wasn't 12,000 BC.
It was, according to where I picked up from, it was 1,250 BC, depending on your source, in parentheses.
1,000, was that 12? Are you saying 1,000?
It's 12. It's 1250 before Common Era.
Huh? Tarhaka?
1250 before the Common Era.
Before the Common Era.
Hold it. Let's go. Tarhaka, are you saying that? What are you saying the book said?
I'm saying that based on this book here, The Axeman Inheritance, author Michael Bradley, forward, an introduction written by Dr. John Henry Clark. And this is what they're stating in the book.
What do they say about Homer?
They're saying that 1250 BC, depending on your source.
Wait now, you breaking, you in a hole. Go ahead.
1250 BC, depending on your source, with the publications of books of folklore.
1250 BC, that means, 1250 BC. Was no Homer. Homer never existed. And the time of Homer, what they're putting out in history is the 9th century BC, which is the 800s, that he wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey. See? So the book, again, is giving misinformation about Homer. Now, no Socrates, no Plato, no Aristotle, no Herodotus, no Euripides, no Homer, and no Solon, and no Hippocrates and everything like that. I'm the one that brought that to our African world attention. Okay? So what I'm saying to you is that the book is misleading. There was no Homer, period, to bring the Iliad and Odyssey as part of European academia lies. Okay? But anyway, we have went way off our subject matter tonight, and I don't care for I don't care to go off our subject like we have done. Okay? Our subject was talking about slavery. Our subject was not talking about anything like that.
Dr. Williams?
Yes.
Dr. Williams, I got another caller with his hand raised. We only have 10 minutes, some of
Okay, go
open
ahead.
up the lines and let. Okay. Area code 813. Please be brief and to the point. If you have a question or comment for our guest, go ahead and state it so he can answer. Area code 813. You on the air. Tell us who you are, where you're calling from, what's your comment, or what's your question for our guest. You got 10
My
minutes.
host, Walter Williams. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, Walter Williams. My name is Oskia. I'm here in Tampa, and we've talked before, so I'm really glad to get in. And I just wanted to ask a question. So we're talking about you.
Where you from?
I'm calling from Tampa, Florida.
Tampa, Florida. Okay, go ahead.
I'm asking you, can you tell, we're talking about Europeans. When did the Holy Roman Empire start?
The Holy Roman Empire.
That's what people
There's no
talk
such
about.
thing as a Holy Roman Empire.
Go
okay,
in.
the Holy Roman Empire simply means that an army that protect, that was called in or could be called in to protect the Rome and the Christian Church. That's the Holy Roman Empire. The first Holy Roman Emperor was Charlemagne, who the Empress Irene in the year 800 called on to go into Rome to protect the Holy Roman Empire. But that's misleading simply because there was no church in Rome to protect. So history is saying that it was Charlemagne. Then history also says, gives you, that was 800. Then history also gives you about a Holy Roman Emperor coming in the 9th century. Okay? But then Frederick is in my book as being a Holy Roman Emperor. Okay? When you go back to, in history, and you go into when the Bible and the church was created over there on the outskirts of Rome, and Christianity, the seed of Christianity had moved into Europe, then you'll find, when you go into the Peppercorn-Jerusalem controversy, then you'll find where the Holy Roman Emperor came in that area over there to save Christendom and so forth and so on, okay? And that's where I would start the Holy Roman Emperor as being started over there in the 15th century.
Yes, sir. Okay, now, and what about, so now, going back to 1439 and John the 8th.
We got 7 minutes now. Got 7 minutes.
Who is the world's first Roman Papa or Pope? Is it Eugenius IV?
Who's the world's first what? Papa or Eugenius IV should be.
Okay,
and,
yeah. It says he was a pope from 1431 to 1447. So when were there churches in Europe and when were there popes in Europe? 1439, 1445?
Yeah, the first pope in Europe was Eugenius IV and Nicholas V. But the book says 1431 is the beginning of Eugenius IV. Okay, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that now. But I can only near that date of when the Vatican was being built and the church was being erected, can I find the two closest names that will fit as a pope in that for that church? But I don't agree with that 1431. No, I don't agree with that.
Last question. So now, I'm.
All right, gentlemen, we come to the end of the broadcast. Dr. Williams, give us access to your books, man.
Okay, well, now, my books, The Historical Origin of Christianity, The Historical Origin of Islam, can be purchased in your local bookstore whether it's African or otherwise. Or you can go online to Amazon and order both books, Historical Origin, Christianity, Historical Origin of Islam by Walter Williams, or you can go to my main distributor in Chicago, Brother Yoel, who owns the Underground Bookstore. You can order my 2 books from him. His phone number is 773-768-8869, 773-768-8869, the Underground Bookstore. He's one of my main distributors, and you can order my books from him. You can email me at Ancient Egyptian, if you want to email me, Walter Williams, email me at ancientegyptian@msn.com. Walter Williams @msn.com. The Ancient Egyptian @msn.com. Ancient Egypt, Ancient Egyptian, msn.com. If you want to converse with me by phone, put your phone number there. I'll call you back. In your email, you put your phone number there. I'll call you back, and we can take it from there. So you can email me at ancientegyptian@msn.com. And if you want to talk to me by phone, put your phone number there. I'll call you back.
All right, Brother Yoel. You with us, man?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay. Thank you very much, and enjoyed the evening. Thank y'all for sharing. Your listening audience. Thank them for tuning in, and you, sir, and Tarhaka and Professor Williams. So, Underground Bookstore in Chicago at 1727 East 87th Street. If you ever visit in Chicago, that's 1727 East 87th Street in Chicago. Email theundergroundbookstore at gmail.com or theundergroundbookstore, the number 1, at yahoo.com. The Underground Bookstore at gmail.com or Underground Bookstore, the number 1, at yahoo.com. All right, thank you very much. Enjoy the evening. And that's it.
All right, my brother. Well, I appreciate everybody for listening in. And I hope y'all done what we told you to do at the outset of the broadcast, was to take notes. And in my personal opinion, I think that every man needs to have his own library in his home, and he should leave this information as a legacy to his children as part of the inheritance. Because in my personal opinion, I think it's more valuable than money. But nevertheless, we're going to close down the broadcast. I've been your host, Tarhaka Amana LB. Y'all have a good evening.
What are the white supremacists doing now? They're doing 4 basic things: racial showcasing, racial population tailoring, racial dislocation, and white sacrificing. And these 4 things are designed to produce maximum sophisticated confusion among the victims. And so far it's been somewhat successful worldwide. Now I'll start with the first one. What is racial showcasing? That means taking huge numbers of black people and putting them out front. There's going to be more of this all over the planet. Many millions of black people that you will see who will be rolling in money. They'll be able to showcase the places where they live. They'll be able to showcase their knowledge and expertise. So you have television now, you have all of the mediums for doing this, for showcasing huge numbers of black people. I will say it will eventually run into the millions, so many that you won't be able to count them. Now, what is this for? This is for any black person that starts talking about racism in the future is going to be laughed at, because they're going to be able to showcase so many black people who are what you call quote-unquote successful, that it will seem that racism has been put out of business. But white supremacy is a world business, and like any other business, it works on profits and losses, which means percentages. You go into business, you expect a certain amount of loss. If you're in the grocery business, well, you might have a load of asparagus that is spoiled. But overall, you will make more profits than you have losses if you're going to stay in the business. Now, so the white supremacists know that the cost of doing the business of white supremacy is going up. They can no longer get away with Joe Louis and Lena Horne like they did years ago. They have to have many, many, many more black people who are going to be showcased. I made up this term just to explain it. You have to make up terms because they won't make them up for you. So now that's the first phase, or one of the first elements in the maximum confusion. And so that black people won't be able to say, they'll say, well, you know, it must be something wrong with me that I'm down and out and don't have a biscuit to eat, because there are so many millions of black people who have so much, so it can't be race. But see, for the 4 or 5 million black people who will be showcased, there will be hundreds of millions worldwide who won't have a biscuit. That's the way the business operates in the future and will be. That's the way it seems to be going according to what? The evidence, according to the logic. The other is racial population tailoring. That's number 2, meaning they're going to be killing huge numbers, either directly or indirectly, of non-white people. When I say black people, I mean, you know, non-white. Anybody who's in the non-white category, and doing this on an ongoing basis. Not to try to kill them all, because when you're in the business of racism, you don't kill off the thing that you need in order to keep racism going. Your ego trip, which is what it's really all about. But you do tailor the population so you can keep them controlled. So you'll kill off a few million in the Congo, then few years up the road, you'll kill off a few million in Nigeria, and a few years up the road, you'll kill off a few in Mexico, and on and on and on. And you will highly select the places where you do this. You'll have it all computerized, where you kill off huge numbers, or you have them, even better still, kill off each other, like you do in most of the cities in the northwestern part of the world, called the northwestern hemisphere, having black people gun down each other, you know, non-white people, the brown people gunning down each other, gangs and all that other foolishness, see, and you kill them off, you know, and you just keep this going and you egg it on, and you put things in place that will see to it that it just keeps going that way. It never stops, because that's the mentality of the people. And this is racial population tailoring. In other places where the people are reasonably sane, they don't have a tendency to kill off each other, then you do things like dry up the water, or poison the rivers, dump toxic waste. There's all kinds of ways to do that racial population tailoring. All right, then the other, number 3, is racial dislocation. Keep them moving. People who are forever on the move through eminent domain, urbanization, urban renewal, gentrification, or, here again, drying up the river. You build a dam 800 miles up, and the river seals off the water behind the dam. I mean, the dam is sealed off, the river is sealed off behind the dam. So that means that all the people down in the valley there, they don't get any water. They need water. They depend on the fishing industry. So now they have to come and work for you, because there's no more water there, no more fish. And you give them minimum wage and a promise for the future as long as they look up to you. So they're completely dependent. But keep them moving. If a black person in the northwestern hemisphere starts getting that second-generation house, then you come through and say you got to build a highway. That's the technique. Now, these are things that you asked about how the white supremacists operate. These are the ways that they operate. The white sacrificing is the 4th. And this is, here again, all 4 of these things are for maximum sophisticated confusion among the victims. So you're not confused. You're keeping your victims confused. So you have white sacrifices, meaning it's kind of parallel to the racial showcasing. But these people in this case are white. like in any army or any military operation, you know you're going to have some losses. So some white people are written off under the system of white supremacy. And a lot of white people are aware of this. They don't like it, but they're told that this is the cost of doing business. Just like a person who goes into the army and knows full well you might get killed. But it goes with the territory of trying to defend your bigger operation. So white sacrifices mean you'll have some more and more white people on park benches, more and more white people begging on streets. They will be greatly visible. But what you won't pay attention to, because black people never pay much attention to what white people are doing, we just watch each other. See, they know that. You'll be passing millions of white people who are doing well on any city street. And for the handful of white people who have fallen through the cracks, you might say, sitting in front of the subways or begging in front of these delicatessen, for the handful that you see doing that, up under the bridge and all like that, it will give the illusion that it's not about race, that white supremacy is officially out of business. So there will be more of these white sacrifices, and they will be greatly visible. But compared to the number of white people who will be prospering